Hitting the reset button with the media, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer changing up the process of the daily press briefings by giving the first questions to publications sitting in the back. He also mentioned the creation of Skype seats to give those beyond 50 miles of Washington, D.C. the chance to ask questions. Joining us right now, former Deputy White House Chief of Staff under President George W. Bush, Karl Rove. Karl, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Your reaction to Sean Spicer's attempt to start off on a fresh footing and a different footing with the media?
Well, a good attempt at it. I suspect if he had the ability to go back in the Wayback Machine and relive one day, it would be Saturday, because that was a dreadful way to begin his relationship with the White House press corps, and a dreadful waste of time for the President of the United States. The entire communications apparatus of the White House, it should be aimed at producing headlines like the one today in the Wall Street Journal. This is what they want. They don't want to have the coverage dominated by whether or not the White House was correct in claiming that this year's inaugural was the most watched on television or the best attended or had generated the most ridership on the Washington Metro system, all of which are inconsequential, and who cares? So it was, I thought, a good way for him. I wish he hadn't even remarked on it yesterday, but instead accentuated the positive. And look, they're off to a new start. He called on people, as you say, from the back. I thought it was interesting that he picked a conservative journalist from a conservative tabloid in New York as the first person to call him. Good for him. And I thought it was also an interesting commentary on saying we're going to have 4, quote, Skype seats so that people from regional media outlets or local media outlets or people who are not credentialed to be at the White House can have 4 seats at each one of these and potentially ask questions. This is continuing a trend that recent administrations have used, particularly the Obama administration, to sort of decentralize coverage. President Obama was keen on giving lots of interviews to people who represented big TV markets and small TV markets around the country in order to get around the Washington press corps.
Carl, it's Dagan McDowell. But, I mean,
of course it is.
Because you can tell by the accent. Carl, but the important thing to remember in terms of dealing with the press is the liberal media, they want this kind of noise out of the White House, and they just have to avoid taking the bait for the next 4 years.
That's right. Look, they troll them, and they shouldn't get trolled. I thought yesterday you could tell it. Spicer called the coverage frustrating. Well, that probably sent some New York Times editor's heart beating faster. You know, he at one point said it's demoralizing to us. Don't, never let them see you sweat. And so, it is what it is, and you ought to stay focused on what is it that you want the message to be, not what is the controversy of the moment, particularly if you're being trolled.
Yep, Karl, good to see you. I think that they could learn from you that he's president of 300 million plus people, not 250,000 or whatever the numbers are. But I do think the presser yesterday actually had some real depth and breadth to it. I have to give Sean Spicer credit for what I'll say the mulligan, because it talked about Russia, Israel, TPP. I mean, I think it had a little more depth than I think what anyone was expecting on the first 24 hours.
I think that's right. I thought he handled himself extremely well. Look, this is one of the worst jobs in the White House. I mean, it's just a dreadful job because you have to go out there and deal with these people every day, and you have to be expert on these subjects. Your job is to collect information and accurately reflect what the administration is doing. And I thought he did a really good job of answering the questions in depth and detail. I also thought this, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but the fact that he didn't call on the usual subjects first meant that he had a chance to have some of these more substantive questions. Some of the opening questions from people who we don't normally see ask the early questions at the briefings I thought were very good, and gave him a chance to have been well prepared, gave Spicer a chance to shine.
Carl, first of all, I'm glad that you agreed with me about Saturday, because I was really worried I was going to start to get some of Robert Wolf's fans, tweeting and email me. So I'm glad about that. What do you think actually happened?
Why is it always about you, man? Why is it always about you? We got to work on this self-confidence thing you got going. It's bad. It's bad, Carl, man. Lack of self-confidence.
Carl, what do you think actually happened on Saturday? I want to know, what did you actually think happened right before Spicer went out there? What happened afterwards? What do you think actually went down?
Well, we won't know. The morning stories.
I know, but what do you think happened? I think you have a good idea.
Hey, you asked the question, let me answer, man. Stop interrupting me. That's how you compensate for this lack of self-confidence, man.
Go ahead, Carl. Yeah, you really had your Wheaties this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I know, Robert. Okay. So, look, here's the deal. We don't know, and we may never know, but the attempt to create the TikTok says that when the president saw the coverage, he responded negatively, and so did senior White House aides, and that they insisted that Spicer go out and immediately chastise the press. And I don't know if that's accurate or not. If it is accurate, there should have been somebody in that process that said, no, Mr. President, we don't need to go out there and chastise them. We need to give them a bigger storyline and then chastise them. And so that the story is not, we have a news conference in which Spicer is obviously upset, obviously angry, pounding the podium and giving it to him. And instead, you know, the object is, what is it that we want him to have? This is what we want him to have.
Yeah.
So how do we drive that home?
Maria,
that's got to be the first,
well, to be clear,
the most important thing that communications people do.
Wait, Carl, I just want to make sure this was Gary Kaminsky asking the question, because I know my wife Lori is watching.
Gary, sorry.
That was not, that Wolfie's the one who was always thinking about himself.
No.
Make sure you know that was me.
Carl and I go way back.
To be clear, you know, it's also, I mean, you know, I saw what happened at the press conference, and I reached out to a Trump administration person and said, what was that? And he said to me, Maria, the fact is we were trying to change the narrative. Maybe it was the wrong way we did it, but we were trying to change the narrative. On every TV in the country, you saw massive throngs of women marching in dozens of cities, and they tried to change the narrative. So then I said to him, okay, changing the narrative would have been better to changing what are you doing on Monday morning. So to be clear, on Sunday Morning Futures, we led with, here's what President Trump is planning for the week. And on Sunday, we told you that he was going to do executive orders on immigration, trade, and jobs. And that's what we did here. So the whole alternative facts thing, I mean, that wasn't the right path to take, as opposed to just telling us what is on his agenda.
Absolutely. Bingo. Bingo. Look, if he had said, think about this, yesterday in the news conference we had this sort of minor statement that the president was going to name a Supreme Court nominee in a week or so. Well, if the president on Saturday afternoon had announced, you know, things that he was going to do on Monday, and/or had announced, I will be making my nomination to the Supreme Court on, you know, January whatever, and you know, here's some other information about that is going to get you running on that. Again, they would have followed that. It was just, but look, we've wasted too much time on this as a country already.
Right.
Let's move on.
We want to talk about, you know, real substantial things. We've been having a debate on TPP this morning. What do you think is going to be the next important executive order or important point on the Trump agenda this week or in the next couple of weeks? We've got to talk about the Supreme Court picks coming up soon.
Yeah, look, that was an important note yesterday because it indicated that I don't think it's likely to happen this week, but he said in a week or so, and the president during the campaign had said on the trail he would announce his pick within the first 2 weeks. So that points towards next week, in all likelihood, the president's going to make a Supreme Court pick. And, of course, that we've had a lot of discussion, largely driven by the kind of people who've been coming to see him, Judge Bill Pryor of the 13th Circuit, Judge Gorsuch of the 10th Circuit, Colleton of the, I can't remember, I think it's the 7th Circuit. Anyway, there have been a number that have met with him or been talked about with him by their sponsors. I think that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. All right, Carl. Great to have your insights as always. Thanks so much.